Y'all know what time it is.
Surf Shorts Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Surf Shorts. Today I have again with me Jesse. What's going on, dude?
Not much. What's happening?
Not much. You know, we were talking. You got out of the Wrightsville Beach area, and for those of you who don't know, which is about 30% of our audience, you know, North Carolina has a really rugged coastline. And there are several capes. The most out cape there, the one that's most out into the ocean is Cape Hatteras. Then you have Cape Lookout, and then you come down to us, and you're at Cape Fear. On the northern side of Cape Fear, there's east-facing beaches, and Wrightsville Beach is one of those. It's crowded. It's connected to UNCW. It has a ton of surfers and some nice blue water. Gets some good waves. Masonboro Island is right beside of it. And then if you go southwest, I know it sounds crazy, you got to look on a map, then you can stay at some other beaches that actually face mostly south, and you took off for there. Where'd you go?
I went to Ocean Isle Beach, which faces almost dead south.
Yeah, you can see the sun rise and the sun set sometimes, right?
That's right. Yeah, it rises on the east end of the beach, which was most people think is the north end.
Yeah, no, it's funny.
Yeah, and then sets on the west end, which everybody thinks is the south end. So yeah, you can see it. It kind of comes up and sets on the water almost.
You'd have to wonder about one of those people like, oh, yeah, that's right. The sun does set in the south.
There are people.
Yeah, y'all and Ocracoke can do that.
Yep.
And I don't know. I guess Frisco can too, but you know what I'm saying. So what sent you down there? You had some family connections, right?
Yeah, I had, so my brother owned a surf shop in Ocean Isle Beach. So I lived in Wilmington in the wintertime, and then the summer, my family kind of shipped me to my brother in Ocean Isle as a daycare center when I was a little kid.
Right.
And when I graduated high school, my brother wanted to go back to college, and he asked me to come down and run the shop for him. And so I did. And
oh, man, I bet you're like, what? Run a surf shop? That sounds terrible. I'm a guy that surfs all the time, and I'm fresh out of high school. I would not want to do that.
Yeah, well, the cool thing down there at the time was it was so seasonal that you really worked for 100 days.
Yeah.
Worked for the summer, and then Labor Day came, and it was a ghost town, so everybody was gone. So you would buy a plane ticket and go somewhere and travel and explore at that point. But
yeah, and so did y'all close the shop?
yeah, my brother sold the shop, and then I guess 2 years after I moved down, and then I ended up opening another store there, and that had a surf shop and a coffee shop together, and ran that for a while until I had my daughter, and we had our daughter. It's hard to be a coffee shop owner.
It is.
And have a daughter.
It is hard to do retail of any type and have kids and also remember what they look like.
Yeah, I got tired of not talking to her, seeing her at all. So it's like, well, let's move on to something else.
Yeah, I hear you. So what, we know you're a surfboard shaper yourself, and you've shaped over 5,000 surfboards. Well, what surfboards, what other I'll be interested in hearing that from you. Like in your surf shop that you owned yourself, you're a shaper, you know about surfboards. What other boards did you carry?
Like brands?
Yeah.
So we carried Super brand surfboards early on. Carried Lost surfboards. Mm-hmm. That was pretty much it in my shop. My brother's shop, he did Lost surfboards and Xanadu surfboards, and then early on he did Blue Hawaii surfboards, and then Perfections out of Myrtle Beach. Sold a lot of those. A lot of power tools back when Dave was doing it.
Dave, Kelly, Kelly Richards, yeah.
So a lot of those guys, and so that was pretty much the main brands that they carried back in those days.
Yeah, definitely my first ever brand new custom made for me surfboard was Kelly Richards. Yeah, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah, my first surfboard was my first surfboard was a Proline.
Yeah. Oh,
And,
yeah.
Yeah. Then I got a Kelly Richard. I got a Perfection, and then my first custom was a power tool, splatter painted bottom and everything.
Cool. Yeah, man. Dave Endress could shape a surfboard. Buddy.
Yeah.
He was a very, very good surfboard shaper. We talked with him. I had Jim Skiba on the show. Yeah, I had Jim on the show, and he and Dave go way, way back. And he was telling me that Dave at one point was in California training or learning from Clyde Beatty himself. And this is, back in the 70s. So I was like, that's some pretty legit statistics about yourself if you're out there shaping with Clyde Beatty.
Yeah. Dave did some stuff back in the early 90s that was way ahead of its time. He did power rods in boards to stiffen them up and change the flex pattern, which they now do all kinds of different things. I mean, the carbon patches on the tail and carbon down the center all is that same kind of thing.
Yeah.
He did flex tails. He did a lot of different kind of twinsers, which was a big thing for him for a while.
Yeah, Michael Paul made a ton of twinsers. Mm-hmm. He got to where he was like, that's what he made.
Yeah.
Mainly. When I think about Dave Endress making a surfboard, I think about the mid 90s, and he was like Charlie Baldwin. He was quickly trying to get away from the really skinny, really narrow boards. And he was, about the time 5.5, 19 1/4 came out. At the same time, he was producing really similar boards to that, except for, they were a little bit bigger for the East Coast. And I had a bunch. I had two that were his. They weren't mine, but I should think Sean O'Donnell somehow ended up saying, hey, ride this and see what you think about it. And then Sean made me some of them, but 5'10", 19 1/4, double stinger swallowtail with a little cheater fin. It was like magic. Mm-hmm. It's like so much better than anything I'd ridden before.
Yeah, the guy that I learned to shape surfboards from, his name was Mike Beanbaugh.
Yeah.
And he learned from Ben Ipa.
Right.
And I was surfing for Mike at the time, and he said he had made a board that was like the boards that I had always rode. And he said, I want to make you a board that instead of having an 11-inch wide nose, let's go to like a 12-inch wide nose. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I don't know why we would do that. I mean, that's not what I'm riding. And he said, you will never know when you're riding the board that the board's wider in the nose, but you'll know it when you're paddling.
When you're paddling, yeah.
And sure enough, I mean, he made that board, and it all of a sudden I was like, I can catch every wave there is.
Right.
And the big thing with surfing is you're only getting better if you're catching waves. So if you're, back in those days, it was a struggle to catch waves, but just a little push of the nose made it so much easier.
Yeah, and we were riding boards that were long for no reason. Like I had a bunch of 6.4s, okay, and if you look at any picture, I don't see any on the wall up there. I have some up in my room, in my chemistry room at school, but if you look at any of the pictures, the whole front of the board is just sticking out of the water like a Dutch boy's wooden shoe, like curving up in there, doing nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was that kind of rocker has a place if you're, dropping in on really big, steep waves or something.
Right.
But, and it does rocker makes a board kind of go straight back up a wave a little easier. But if the board's short, it goes straight back up the wave easier too. So,
right.
I rode 6.4s too. And I was, 5'11", 120 pounds.
Yeah.
I rode a 6.4 because I thought that's what you're supposed to ride.
Right. Yeah. So that pushes us. So that pushes us down the road a little bit here in this conversation. So you owned a surf shop on the beach, and then, you had a daughter, let it go. and there are other surf shops down there. And you said you were down there the other day and the waves were good and like hardly anyone was surfing.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre.
Yeah, it's really weird because you look at the rest of the East Coast and it's really like flourishing again.
Sure.
It's just like the 90s were when everybody was, kids were surfing and adults were surfing and families were surfing. And but you go down to my area and it's none of that. There's, there's some young kids that surf in the summer and but no like high schoolers surfing.
Yeah.
Most of the people that are surfing are still, in that 45-year-old plus range.
Us.
Yeah.
Or me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So it's just like they're the guys that were surfing then and that are still surfing now.
And you were saying that the surf shops down there really hopped on the foam board train really early.
Yeah. The foam boards, right at the very beginning when they started, people were riding the foam boards and they had,
Jamie O'Brien.
yeah, Jamie O'Brien and those guys.
Ben Gravy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and for the foam board companies, I mean, it's genius. You take Jamie O'Brien that can ride. I saw him riding a window the other day.
That's awesome.
So you take guys that can ride anything and you put them on what you're trying to sell and you show them, get barreled at pipeline on a 9-foot foam board and people are like, this is a high performance board. They're riding at the most high performance wave in the world.
Yeah. And you're like, no, that's a high performance dude.
Yeah.
You've now bought a foam board that's got a 90-degree hard rail from the tail to the nose.
Yeah. And they have their place. I'm not knocking foam boards and saying that they're horrible. I've got some. My daughter rides a foam board and
yeah, you have a surf camp. I used to have a surf camp.
yeah, I mean, they're great. You can run over each other with them. No one gets hurt. They don't get dinged.
Yeah. My daughter's got a 6'4" Ben Gravy.
Yeah.
And it's great. I take it. If we go anywhere, anytime I throw that thing in the truck and there are many days my regular board's not going to work and I have a blast.
Yeah. I mean, as I've got older, people keep saying, oh, you should, you need a longboard. You should take a longboard when the surf's small. And I still haven't come to that point where I feel that I can do that.
Sure.
I don't like longboarding per se.
Yeah, it's
but
different.
I will ride a 7-foot foam board.
Yeah. Yeah.
On little days.
So when we were talking about this, you're not putting any blame on the foam boards.
No.
But what the foam board does, and this is what I was telling you I wanted to talk about, was what the foam board does. You go to a shop, and you buy a foam board. Well, you can buy that foam board at any surf shop in the world, and it's the exact same thing.
Right.
So you don't have now a relationship with your surf shop in the same way. And the number one, and I can tell you this because I run some surf shops, all right, or helped with some other surf shops, and I ran one for Bert, and we sold a whole lot of surfboards. And the number one thing was the surfboard is the connection to the surf shop.
That's exactly right.
And it's because somebody makes it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, I could see that backfiring on somebody that had really good intentions. Hey, check out these boards. These are killer. These are so much fun. And then, well, if you're not pushing like a handmade surfboard out the door, you're losing part of your relationship with your customers.
Yeah, for the surf shop owners, it's horrible because, I mean, as far as a surfer, you buy all of your clothes and your wetsuit and everything else from where you bought your surfboard from.
That's exactly right.
So if you're buying a foam board, it could be a foam board from anywhere, really. And so you're maybe not going back to that same surf shop. You may go, oh, I'll go to the one down the road. They have the same surfboards or whatever. And so you don't have that loyalty to that shop anymore. Yeah. But it's also, a foam board is great for when you're learning to surf or if you're trying to surf teeny little junk waves. But it comes to a point where you want to turn.
Right.
And a foam board doesn't really turn.
It does not. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, you can do a cutback on a foam board.
You can make it turn.
Yes.
But it doesn't turn itself.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't do a snap and come out of it with more speed than you went into it and go, oh man, I'm addicted to that.
Yeah. I felt the tail rocker in this board pushed me down from like the lip, and like that was it. I did it just right. And that's what the surfboard does.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, even this week, Ben Gravy was in Panama. Mm-hmm. That's where his videos are coming out of. Have you seen any of the Panama videos?
I did. I was in Panama a few months ago. I didn't find anything like what they're surfing.
Yeah, well, I don't know the name of this break, but Guyan's there.
Yeah, it's called Silverbacks.
Yeah. So like, you know, Guyan posted something. I was like, oh man, that's awesome. He's like, well, Ben Gravy's here too. And then the next day or 2 days later, I flipped in on Ben Gravy and Guyan's on there, like getting barreled. So the reason I brought this up is, that wave is throwing.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Ben Gravy, who's one of the best foam board surfers in the world, he whips out a shortboard, like a handmade fiberglass surfboard, because that's the only thing that's going to get the job done.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's Panama, and you've been to Panama.
Yeah.
So the surf trips get different when you have a family.
Right. I took my whole family to Panama when we went, and it was different. We did meet up with a Wilmington guy, Dixon, that lives there, and we stayed at his house, which is awesome. If you're ever in Panama, he's in the San Carlos area, which is a great spot. It's close to Panama City, and but we went in the wrong time of the year. We went the rainy season, and rained a bunch. There was a lot of wind. When we finally did find surf, it was there was a river mouth that had flooded and was pushing real brown water and dead animals out of it. Yeah. And I was like, I'm not getting in that. And,
no.
So I surfed a couple times, but nothing like what Guyan and Ben Gravy found this week.
Yeah. Yeah. So then you were telling me about another trip you took with your family to, where was this?
To St. Thomas.
St. Thomas. All right. Yeah. So you're in St. Thomas, and that, you know, a lot of people driving in the cars right now, they're shaking their head like, what are you talking about, St. Thomas?
Yeah.
What are you talking about, surf trip to St. Thomas?
Yeah, it wasn't a surf trip. We went, my wife's family and myself and my wife and my daughter. She was only 6 months old, and we wanted to go on vacation, and it was like, oh, well, St. Thomas, I've never been there.
Sure.
You know, my daughter's 6 months old. I'm not really, you know, I'm trying to spend time with her, not really looking for a surf trip,
right,
per se. So yeah, St. Thomas sounds awesome. And so we went, and you know, we were snorkeling and hanging out by the pool, and just hanging in the resort that we were staying at. And I'd talked to some people before and said, oh, you know, is there any surf in St. Thomas? And a couple people are like, oh yeah, well, you know, you can get on a boat and go to a reef, and there might be surf out there.
Yeah, and like you could do that in Belize too.
Yeah.
Like if you got lucky. Nobody goes to Belize to surf on purpose, but if you wanted to go out to like the outer reef or whatever, you can catch a wave if you do it right and the wind's not blowing and all the conditions come together, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was like, yeah, I guess you could, but I was like, I'm not going to take a board bag.
No.
With a 6-month-old, a board bag, and then, you know, pay for it, going there, coming back. It's like, there's not going to be any waves.
Yeah. And, you know, it's a family vacation. You got a 6-month-old baby with you. You're not going to go down there and abandon your wife to just, you know, be 25 again. Or...
No, definitely not. But we were there, and we were kind of just sitting around on the beach, and I pulled my phone out and I said, well, you know, let me just see kind of maybe I kind of looked, there was a little bit of wind that day, and you kind of saw a little bit of humps on the horizon way off. And
yeah,
I was like, well, let me just look and just see, on Magic Seaweed, it'll pull up, your closest break and let me see if I can, if it shows me what a reef is, just to see kind of what the surf might be like.
Yeah.
So I did, and it pulled up St. Thomas, and then it pulled up a little beach called Megan's Bay, and it said that the forecast for the next day was going to be 6 to 10 foot and clean.
And you're like,
And I was like,
wait a minute.
It's like, what? I'm sitting in St. Thomas. There's no possibility for waves, but they're saying it's going to be 6 to 10 foot and clean.
I love you, honey, but there's a limit.
Yeah. Like, we really need to explore this island, like the other side of it.
Something tells me the baby would really enjoy the other side of the island. We should take her over there.
Yeah, it's a whole different experience, and let's just check it out. Well, I ended up talking everybody into it. I said, let's get in the rental car and let's just go check this other side of the island out. And I said, online it shows they have surfboard rentals, and it'd be really cool just for me to be able to say that I surfed in St. Thomas.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I was like, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And so they were like, oh yeah, I mean, everybody's adventurous in the family. So they're like, yeah, that'd be, we'll check it out. We'll see what's going on. So we get up in the morning, not as early as probably most surfers would get up, but
Not a surf trip.
yeah, but
Dark.
we got up, ate breakfast, and got in the car and headed to find Megan's Bay. And so it was all the way, we were kind of staying where the cruise boats came right past us in parts. So we were kind of in the main area of St. Thomas, and Megan's Bay was over the mountain and the other side.
Yeah, and I want to be honest with you. How big is this island? Like, I don't know.
It's not big. It took us probably 30 minutes, I think, to drive.
Okay,
So
that's what I was imagining.
Yeah, it's a small island, and that's, you're going 15 miles an hour the whole time.
On like a single lane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, once you get out of the main populated area, then it's, like a lot of Caribbean islands, it's small roads and people honking horns and
Going around the turn, the blind turn.
Yeah. Yeah. Blind turns and motorcycles and cows in the road and all kinds of stuff. So,
Oh yeah.
but we pull into Megan's Bay, and right there's a big sign that says surfboard rentals. I was like, awesome. This is perfect. And so we parked the car, and I get out and I look around, and surfboards, there's no surfboards sitting outside of the rental place. And I'm looking out at the bay, and there's a ton of boats parked in the bay. So I'm kind of confused. I'm like, well, where is the surf at?
Yeah. Where's this wave?
Yeah, like it's supposed to be 6 to 10 foot today. Like there's, where is this at?
Yeah.
And so I kind of look out to the left and past all these boats, and in the corner you see this little left point break coming around this corner.
Yeah.
And but you could tell there was definitely a wave.
Yeah. I can imagine it.
So I was like, man, okay, so there's a wave. So now I just have to wait to see these guys open up and rent a board. So we got everybody out and set the beach up for everybody, and everybody got their chairs out and all that kind of stuff. And the whole time I'm looking over my shoulder thinking that the guy's going to open the surfboard rental place.
Yeah.
And nothing at all. And I see these two kind of old salty guys sitting on a bench over kind of next to it, and you could tell they're looking out at the waves and talking. So I said, well, I'm going to go over and talk to these guys.
Yeah.
And my wife's like, well, do you know them? And I was like, no, but I mean, I'm going to go see if they know when this guy opens, or, they look like they kind of hang out around here.
Yeah. They look like they surf. So
yeah.
I do kind of know them.
Yeah. So I went to go check it out. So I went up to these guys and I said, hey, when does the surfboard rental guy open? And he's like, oh man, there's waves today. And I said, I know, I'm from North Carolina. I'd like to rent a surfboard so I could surf. And he's like, oh yeah, they went out early this morning to the reefs. They got on the boats and went out to the reefs. That's where the good surf is. And I said, well, is there not good surf over on the corner? He's like, oh yeah, it's pretty good today, but it's really good out on the reefs. He's like, but so those guys won't be back in today.
They're gone.
Yeah, he's like, if it's really good, they don't rent surfboards. So I was like, oh, okay. I said, well, do you know anybody that would rent a surfboard? And one guy looks at me and he's like, well, I have a surfboard. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. Well, let's talk numbers.
Yeah. It's like, all right, are you trying to rent it to me, or, what's the deal? And he's like, I mean, it's in a shed kind of back behind us. I haven't surfed in a couple years, but I've got a board back there. And I was like, well, if you would let me rent it from you or borrow it, like I would love to, be able to just go out and say I surfed in St. Thomas.
Yeah. I don't have to go to the outer reef. I just surf that wave right there.
Yeah.
And I'll be happy.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm just going to go right, you can see where I'm at. I'm just going to be right there. And so he's like, well, how long have you surfed? I said, oh man, I've been surfing pretty much my whole life. And he's like, yeah, well, where are you from? I said, well, I'm from North Carolina. And I never say Ocean Isle Beach because no one knows where that is.
Yeah, I never say I'm from Hampstead. I say I'm from Wilmington.
Yeah, that's me too. I'm like, I'm from Wilmington, Wrightsville Beach area. And he's like, oh, yeah. It's like, well, we're from the Cocoa Beach area, Florida. So I immediately go, oh, yeah, I used to surf there all the time. I'd go there in the winter. And so you could tell that he's willing to let me borrow the surfboard, but not quite sure if he wants to let me borrow the surfboard.
Yeah. He's going to make you work for it at the very least.
Yes, for sure. So he starts asking me all kinds of questions. So who do you know in Cocoa Beach?
And you're like,
And I'm like, well, I mean, I've got some friends that live there. And, I used to surf with a bunch of kids that were from there. And he's like, uh-huh. He said, well, what'd he say?
it's all right. Take your time.
Get some water. Yeah, so then he goes back into it and he's like, so do you ever surf like any surf contests or anything? And I said, well, yeah, I did. As a kid, I surfed a lot of surf contests and the ESA. And I said, and at that time I was a co-director of the Southern North Carolina district of the ESA. So I said, I'm in the ESA still as a director. And he said, well, do you know? And he named a director from Florida. And I said, yeah, I know him. He's been around for a long time. And so then he started warming up to me. He said, well, this board isn't the best board. Like, I don't know what kind of board you ride. And he says, what are you looking for?
So we've gone from, I'm not sure you can actually surf, to now, maybe my surfboard's not good enough for you. And you're the whole time's been like, does it float?
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't care what kind of surfboard it is.
Yeah.
So he goes into, asking me, well, what kind of surfboard do you ride? So I'm like, well, I usually ride like a 6'2", short board, or a fish, or, I've got a long board, or, whatever. And he's like, yeah, I think this board's like a 7'2" or 7'6". So that works. That's good.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that's fine. So we go back and forth, and finally goes, I'll go get it and I'll let you look at it. So that's great.
You're like, that's what I was hoping to do, is look at a surfboard. Yeah. And I'm going to look at the waves.
Yeah. The whole time I'm looking over my shoulder, and my wife is staring back, and she's like looking at me like, are these guys going to kidnap my husband?
Yeah, like, how could this conversation be taking this long?
Yeah, like he was just going to ask if they could find a surfboard, and now he's been over there for like 45 minutes talking with these guys. While I'm sitting here with a 6-month-old. But so he comes back, and he has a 7'6" Stewart Fun Shape that is as brown as you can get.
Yep.
D-Lam deck, You
Yeah.
know, holes in the rails.
Probably made during our era.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's been in that shed for probably years there. It's got, you know, the wax is slippery. I mean, it's a horrible surfboard as far as the condition. He's like, I mean, this is all I got. I said, Matt, if you would let me ride that board, I will take it. And he said, okay. He said, but do you know how to get out there? And I was like, well, I guess you just paddle. And he said, well, there's like a circular current. And if you start to paddle that way, it's going to pull you out this way. So you got to paddle around that sailboat and then around the other sailboat and you'll get out, which made it to where it was like a 3/4 of a mile paddle.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because I am a little bit familiar with how the Caribbean works, and you're on this beach. Like, I'm imagining this wave is like in the distance.
Yeah, it's way out there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 100 boats, 100 sailboats between me and this wave.
Yeah.
And I still have no idea how big the wave is, what kind of bottom the wave has. No, I have nothing. I have nothing because no one is there to tell me anything other than this guy saying you just got to paddle around these sailboats. But that's what I do. And it takes a while to get out. And the whole time I'm like, I hope this was a good idea. I don't know what's going to happen, but I get out there and sure enough, it's, you know, well overhead, left point break, kind of mushy, but that was all right. Cause I was on
you're on a fun board.
Board. Yeah.
It's perfect.
But no one out, only people I saw were there some people sitting on boats as I paddled by.
Yeah.
I caught 5 waves.
Right.
And then spent 45 minutes paddling back in.
And you did it.
Yeah. And then I couldn't find the guy. So then I'm on the beach walking around with this board and I'm like, where is this guy at? Like, I don't know where to leave his board or what to do. And finally his friend pops out of a bush down the beach and it's like, you can just leave it right there. I was like, all right, I'm out.
I'm laughing. I think most people that have traveled and been to little places like that can absolutely imagine like some over-tanned, crusty, slightly elderly expat just walking out of the bushes. And you're like, what the what?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like 11 o'clock in the morning and he's already fried.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, you made it back.
That's awesome. Dude, that is awesome. So man, so you pulled it off. The family was happy. They had a Caribbean beach for the day. You're away from the tourists. You got away from the sailboat. You got to surf a left-hand point break you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tell people all the time that when they talk about surfing, I'm like, you know, the best part about surfing is that it does force you to kind of explore different zones.
Yeah.
And we would have never, if I wouldn't have looked on my phone that day, we would have never at all seen that side of the island.
Yeah.
We would have stayed right there in our resort and relaxed and hung out. And but it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That is
It was
awesome.
really cool.
Yeah. That's a really cool story, man. Well, hey, thanks for telling us. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm going to throw one more thing in there. So you're talking about Ocean Isle. I saw this article. I'm going to pop it up right here because you know how Ocean Isle is. So this article came up in the news today, and it was most dangerous beaches. And it's like a North Carolina beach is on most dangerous beaches in, whatever. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? North Carolina beach, most dangerous. So, immediately I'm thinking, well, okay, maybe Outer Banks or, something like that. Well, there was a list of most dangerous beaches, basically to be in the water or to surf. Hang on. And this is the wrong link. I'll have to edit this. But it's basically, here we go. So the most dangerous beaches to be, for water sports, to be in the water or to be surfing or swimming or whatever. And as a surfer, all right, I'll go ahead and tell you that Myrtle Beach is on here, and it's because of drownings and sad things that, happen, when you have a lot of inexperienced people around the water. Oak Island, believe it or not, is number 8.
Yeah.
And these are all East Coast beaches. So here is my Jeopardy moment for you. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you it's not the Outer Banks, but where do you think the number 1 most dangerous East Coast beaches? And you have to take into account the wildlife in the area as well. Waves and dangerous wildlife that a surfer would be like, oh, duh, yeah, I know exactly what beach they're going to say.
New Smyrna.
Yes, sir. Number 1.
New Smyrna is. I have surfed there and seen more sharks ever. Yeah. And I was at a surf contest years ago, and 4 people got bit either on their foot or their hand before lunchtime, and they finally called the contest off because they said, "Oh, well, there's too many sharks moving around." Yeah. I was like, "Well, there was too many sharks moving around when the first person got bit."
Yeah, that should have been the end.
Yeah, but they waited till 4.
Yeah, 4. They probably, I can see the direction. Okay, what number do we have to hit before we call this?
Yeah, it's like
4. 4 is the magic number.
Yeah,
that is so funny. And here's to throw it on the New Smyrna train, because I knew when I opened up this article that's what it was going to be. Last weekend, I was racing a national sprint enduro. It's a dirt bike race, okay? It's a really specific type of dirt bike race. It's very fun, okay? Like you just go out there and you have fun and you enter whatever your class is. So I'm sitting in this crowd of people. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of dirt bikes, and we're funneling down into this little line where you only take off one at a time through a little timed gate. And I'm sitting in I look to my right, and the guy I'm talking to, who was in my class, is Daniel Saki.
Swackalupo.
I was like, dude, what is going on? And we both had like this guy, like, wow, I haven't seen you in 20 years moment. But I was telling him about the podcast and how I talk about dirt bikes on the podcast sometimes or whatever, because I think the two sports overlap for some mysterious reason. And he's like, I've got a surf short for you. I was like, okay, well, what's your surf short? And he's like, well, just not too long ago, I was coaching a girl, coaching her in surfing, and we were in New Smyrna, and, a shark came through. She surfed and landed on a shark, or a board landed on a shark. I don't remember the exact story, but he was like, she came running out of the water and she was absolutely terrified. And I was like, well, did she just run across the sharks? Is that how she got out?
Saki's probably got he probably has some good stories. I've gone on a few trips with him that we could have stories from, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's funny.
We saw a big great white in Australia when we were there.
Oh man. He was with you on the Australia trip?
No,
okay.
But when I was on that Australia trip, we saw a big, a great white jumped. We were at Deba, which is just beside Snapper.
Right.
And a big great white jumped right out of the water, hit some kind of fish probably 10 feet from us.
Yeah.
And you've never seen surfers paddle so fast.
Yeah.
I mean,
because it's different. Out here, a shark breaks the water. You're like, screw you, shark, get out of here. Because it's not a great white.
Well, I went to the beach and I was talking to this Australian guy, and I was like, but you guys have shark nets.
Yeah.
And he just starts laughing. And he said, well, you see dolphin, porpoise out here, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, you think that the porpoise can get through the nets and the sharks can't? He's like, he's like, that's something that people say just to keep you calm.
For the tourists.
Yeah.
Like the mayor in Jaws comes out in this slick suit. Well, we've got these shark nets, so we're still going to have the 4th of July celebration.
Right. Yeah. I've never been scared of sharks, but I don't know that I will surf a whole lot more in New Smyrna. Maybe if my kids get into surfing and they're in a contest in New Smyrna, I'll surf. But I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely surfed around almost every time I was there. I saw sharks. You know, you're walking out and they're like, they're in too shallow water and like wriggling around. You kind of walk by them to get out.
Yeah.
Charlie Baldwin's daughter was had a viral clip, and I saw it go by on the news or something on my phone. I think it was Lindsay, and she's like wearing a GoPro and like surfing over multiple sharks.
Yeah.
And the news is like, oh, look at this. I was like, that's Tuesday in New Smyrna.
Yeah.
That's Tuesday. Well, hey man, thanks for coming on the show, bro. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Later.
But-